And there we are, live. Hey, everybody. Zach New here, Ryan Warner, Jennifer Howard, with our weekly Facebook Live, giving you updates on what's happening in the immigration world. Yeah, if you have any questions, please throw them in chat. We'll talk through them. But otherwise, we'll just give you some updates on what's happening. Rylan, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So the Cato Institute released a study, I think it was around 10 days ago, so a couple of weeks ago, talking about the increase of visa interview times, or the wait for visa interviews, rather. And so, obviously, with the coronavirus, a lot of embassies and consulates around the world shut down their visa processing. And we had a lot of lawsuits over that, over telling them, hey, you need to keep processing these visas. You can find ways to do it even with coronavirus happening, because you're forcing people to wait crazy amount of times for them to be able to enter the United States and rejoin their family, or even partake in businesses that they need to partake in, or things of that nature. So they now that coronavirus, I mean, obviously it still exists, but they are trying to get back to those pre-visa or pre-COVID times with their backlogs, but they are nowhere near what they were prior to COVID. So, for some examples that the Cato Institute cited, they talk about how student visa interviews are up to 49 days of wait time. That is 5 times longer than they were before COVID. Temporary work visas are up to 75 days. And these days that I'm saying, these are the average day wait length. So it could be above that at certain consulates or below it at other consulates. So temporary work visas got up to 75 days. Previously, they were 12. And the majority of consulates now take over 6 months to schedule a tourist visa. There is an average of 247 days of waiting for tourist visas, and there was previously 17 days of waiting. So people trying to enter the United States on non-immigrant visas, they are facing huge wait times that they did not face before COVID. And even though we have vaccinations now, they still have all those backlogs of they were basically shut down for 2 years and not processing a lot of things. And so now they are slowly working their way through them, but we're not up to speed where we need to be. For instance, in Santiago, Chile, there is a current wait time for a non-immigrant B2 tourist visa of 886 days. So if you want to come visit the United States, you need to wait 2.5 years before you can get a visa there. And so, obviously the consulates are, well, I should say obviously, and supposedly is how I should preface this. Consulates are trying to deal with these backlogs and trying to do everything that they can. For instance, in Monterrey, the consulate there in Mexico, they have actually doubled their visa issuance in this year than what it was in 2018 through 2019. So at least they're at least doing something. We see some change there to try to get through this backlog. But that's one example. Another example, Ho Chi Minh City, is still is actually half of what they were prior to COVID in terms of visa issuances. So they've not at all got up back to where they need to be. And there is still, this is all for non-immigrant visas. There's still a huge backlog for immigrant visas as well. 433,000 immigrant visas are still waiting for their appointments. So nearly 500,000. Has it dropped? Yes, it used to be over 500,000, but we're still pretty close to 500,000 people waiting for their immigrant visa appointments to join their spouses, to join their loved ones in the United States. based off their current processing rates, we can maybe expect people to get appointments within 10 months, maybe. And that, again, is based off of an average. So different consulates going to be processing people. Could be a year and a half people could wait for an immigrant visa appointment. We don't really know exactly. But so it's still frustrating. And I wanted to just put it out there for people that we are still dealing with the repercussions of the COVID backlog. You should not be expecting to get immigrant visa appointments quickly. At least if you have experience with getting these types of visa appointments previously, just know that they are way out of proportion from what they used to be. It is ballooned crazily, and we're still exactly where we were, even though they're trying to work on those backlogs. How could we potentially cut this down more? How could we do it faster? The Cato Institute, in their study, they did cite, in 2012, there was a similar situation of people having to wait months and months for non-immigrant visas, and President Obama issued an executive order requiring 80% of non-immigrant visas to be processed within 3 weeks. And it worked, actually. Suddenly, the consulates and the embassies were able to get these wait times down way low. There were some people saying that it wasn't really sustainable and it was eventually going to cause issues. Eventually, the executive order was taken out by President Trump, but it has not been reinstated by President Biden. And, I could see how President Biden, with COVID not entirely over, still kind of hesitant to put something like that, put an executive order out there like that. But it is potentially possible. We've seen it done before. I mean, we do still now have this huge backlog, so who knows what the consulates and embassies would be able to do with a 3-week deadline, chasing them down. So we would have to see whether it could even work now, but it's possible. Maybe President Biden, if we actually want to remain competitive in terms of tourism, in terms of countries being able to send people elsewhere, and having students come in from other places, and business people come in from other countries, maybe that's something that President Biden should be considering. So hopefully in the coming months, we can see these wait times go down and down, but for now, be prepared to wait, unfortunately. Zach, do you want to
Sure.
talk about your story this week?
I will go next. Yeah, so that's what's happening abroad. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening at the southern border, or will be happening at the southern border. So ICE, or really it was the Department of Homeland Security as a whole, was given some extra money from Congress to implement this new program where they're going to be giving ID cards to folks who are being processed at the southern border. These are called secure docket cards, or are going to be called secure docket cards. And from what we know, they're going to be containing a lot of really cool information that's going to be really helpful for folks who are crossing the border. So for example, it's an ID card that somebody can use. It's got your photo, it's got your name, all of those types of things. Eventually, there's plans to allow folks to travel on domestic airplanes using them. It's supposed to have a QR code that you can use to actually just access your case information right there. You scan it and see what's going on in your case. The more transparency, the better, in my opinion. And yeah, it's just a really cool way for folks who are coming across the border to not only have some documentation showing that they lawfully entered in all of this, but to get, I guess, a little bit of a benefit to doing things kind of the right way. Coming in and crossing and asking for asylum, for example. They're still going to be put into removal proceedings as normal, and everybody's going to be processed as normal. There's thoughts that this is going to be kind of a supplement to other alternatives to detention. So people sometimes hear about like ankle monitors and things like that. There was a phone app that was used. I think it's still being used as well. So this is going to kind of supplement that, these alternatives to detention, but means fewer people being put into detention centers, which means fewer people who are in horrible conditions, and fewer people that we have to pay to have housed in detention centers. It's not cheap to do that, and it's all taxpayer money. So, yeah, really exciting stuff. It's I think a good a step in the right direction. We're going to have more efficient processing. We'll have benefits for folks who cross the border. We're going to have ability for these folks to travel domestically using these ID cards, and really transparent access to their case information. A lot less likely to miss your court hearing if you can just scan your ID and says, on August 1st, you better be here. So exciting stuff. Not sure when it's going to be implemented. It's for the 2023 budget, so I imagine they're in the process of putting everything together still. But I guess, yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, I can only imagine what the right-wing outlets are going to go and say about this sort of thing. I mean, Zach mentioned it already, but it bears repeating that this is not any kind of status. I mean, it is just an ID card, which allows people to do very basic things that somebody should be able to do, but it's not going to quicken their process or cut them out of, for instance, an asylum process. They still need to go through all the necessary steps to actually get their asylum status. But I'm sure there are going to be people out there that are saying, oh, so now people just get a card and they can just do whatever they want. No, they still need to go through all the other steps if they are seeking asylum, for instance, to be able to get asylum. But at least now they have some sort of identification that they can provide. And whenever, if anything happens, I mean, now they have something showing who they are and what they're doing in the United States. So it's a good thing for that reason.
And yeah, speaking of asylum seekers, I mean, when somebody flees their country in a panic, because they're afraid of the horrible persecution that they're facing, they don't always bring their ID documents. When you're running away, the first thing you think isn't, let me grab my passport, let me make sure that I have my ID with me. A lot of people don't have biographic documents when they come and are asking for asylum. So having some form of actual ID is going to be huge. I mean, I'm curious to see how states will use this for driver's licenses, for example. I wonder if you can use it as proof of identity for obtaining a driver's license. Because the way the asylum process works now is it takes years and years and years. So if you're going to be here, you're going to be working, you're going to be staying, be nice to have some, I guess, federally recognized ID that you could point to, even if you didn't bring your birth certificate with you when you fled your home country. So yeah, exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Jennifer, want to take it away, close us out?
That is very exciting stuff. So so speaking of like efficiency and whatever, but I think we've talked about this before, but there's this thing called prosecutorial discretion, and it exists in criminal law. So where like the district attorney's office has the ability to decide which cases they're going to prosecute and which ones they're going to dismiss. And this is a thing that's it's been around in immigration for a long time. We saw a lot of it during the Obama administration, and then we saw it get completely wiped out during the last administration. He shall not be named. But when Biden came into office, he put out some guidance saying, I want ICE, basically, and DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, to take a look at this, and let's work on this efficiency. There's over 1 million people in the immigration court backlog, and so that was kind of one of the reasons that prosecutorial discretion came back, like it did this last, I guess, year or so. But there's been a lot of litigation around it. And so last week, the latest update is that last week, the Supreme Court decided that they were not going to issue a stay of this order that came out of Texas back in June, that vacated one of the memos that reestablished these guidelines for enforcement for prosecutorial discretion. So to go back, in September of last year, there was a memo that came out that laid out 3 categories of cases, which would be considered enforcement priorities. And so it was threats to national security, threats to public safety, and threats to border security. And so you think this is something that everyone would be happy about, that, okay, we're going to focus on like the most dangerous people, because there's all these people in proceedings that are here waiting for a court date for years and years and years. So wouldn't it be better if the government was able to say, okay, we're going to focus our resources on these really dangerous people that are here, and the people that are just here, like living their lives, going to work, not causing issues, but we're not going to focus on them right now. You'd think that'd be a good thing. But like Rylan was saying, like this, the right-wing media likes to spin it. I was reading some articles about the prosecutorial discretion, and basically the way it's being spun by right-wing media is that oh, you know, the Biden administration is just trying to like not deport anybody, and they just want to let everybody stay here, and these are criminal aliens, and blah blah blah. So that's the latest. But we have still been seeing ICE, at least in Denver. I've heard in other cities it's not quite the same, but in Denver still, ICE is entertaining requests for prosecutorial discretion on a case-by-case basis. There was a period where they were just like offering PD, is what we shorten it to, and we're still kind of seeing that a little. Like I've had a lot of hearings recently where the hearing is scheduled for the purpose of us discussing whether prosecutorial discretion is appropriate. But what I've been seeing the last like probably week or two, is the government, instead of saying like, oh yeah, we've reviewed this and we're going to offer PD, we want to dismiss the case, there's been a little bit more of, we've reviewed it and we're not sure, like please submit a formal request for prosecutorial discretion. So that is a little change, but they're still being considered, and so we're still submitting them. And ways where it can come in handy, just to give examples. So if you're here, if you entered without a visa and you're married to a U.S. citizen and your spouse has filed a petition for you, an I-130 petition, but you need a waiver to be able to do your consular processing, because you do have the unlawful presence in the United States and you have to leave to do your process since you didn't enter on a visa. Being able to administratively close a court case, which just like is kind of, you're still in proceedings technically, so you still have to like take voluntary departure before you can leave, but being able to do that or dismiss a case is great, because then you can file the waiver here and do everything here and only have to leave and be separated from like your spouse and children for a couple of weeks, instead of having to leave, do your interview, get denied, and then be stuck in your home country for years and be separated from your family, unable to work, so it's a good thing, but we'll see what happens. We're still, I think we're not expecting a decision from the Supreme Court on this whole issue till probably like spring or summer 2023. So we'll see. Yeah.
It's such a weird place of like, oh well, these have been repealed or enjoined, but still the courts are kind of still abiding by them. I mean, they're still entertaining the the PD requests. That's why I say PD. So even though we what even are the guidelines for PD right now, it's very unclear. But yeah, I mean, definitely, like Jennifer said, they are still being processed. So just because these have been enjoined does not mean that PD is impossible for people. So if you think that maybe something like this could apply to you and you're interested in perhaps getting prosecutorial discretion, you should reach out to our office to schedule a consultation. And then, so for questions today, I did see we got one from Sami Khan Alokozai. Sorry for mispronouncing that. I cannot speak today. And he says, hello, USCIS is not processing Afghan HP cases. So not much of a question, more just a statement, probably really frustrated. And I totally feel that frustration because, yes, the last update that I saw, feel free if you guys have seen a more recent update, was that were around 46,000 humanitarian parole applications that were still pending, and they were very, very slowly going through them. I know that we still have cases that we filed way back at the end of last year that we're still waiting on decisions for. There's really I mean, not much else that we can do. All of the requests that we submitted had an expedite request on the front of them. I mean, saying, hey, this is a very urgent matter. You need to process this as quickly as you can. These people are in danger. And here we are, over 7 months later, over half a year later, still just twiddling our thumbs waiting for a decision. What are they doing? I mean, it's so frustrating. I understand that they maybe didn't have the capacity for all of those right at the get-go, but it's been quite a while now and we're still waiting. So is there anything that you guys would suggest people try to do to try to get things sped up?
Yeah, there's not really much. I mean, I still have some from September there. I'm waiting for a decision on.
Yeah.
So with mine, I have even submitted, I mean, we're coming up on a year now. And I think part of the problem is that there was no prior communication that what happened in August was happening, like from the administration. And so I think USCIS was totally caught off guard of what was going to happen. But also it is frustrating because we heard from USCIS last year, like, oh, the reason all our other cases are backlogged is because we're focusing all our resources on these parole cases. But if that's the case, like, why are they all still pending after this time? But so in mine, I have been submitting expedite requests basically like monthly. And I got a response last week that just said, thank you for contacting the USCIS Humanitarian Affairs Branch. The U.S. government is making every effort to assist individuals with pending parole requests. USCIS is currently experiencing an extremely high volume of requests for parole and must adhere strictly to the expedite guidelines. Unfortunately, we were unable to expedite this case. USCIS is aware of the sensitive nature of the case and will work as quickly as possible to issue a decision. You will be notified once the case is adjudicated. And this is a case where, like, the Taliban's literally knocking on our client's door, like, trying to find.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in hiding. So, but they've been, like, knocking on neighbors' doors and family members and, like, where are they hiding? We're going to kill you if you don't tell us. Like, and apparently that's not enough to expedite. It's like, your life is literally in danger and has been for a year.
Yeah.
But it's horrible. I've been talking to a couple of the Colorado congressional offices about it too the last couple of weeks, and they're saying too, because we've also tried requesting congressional assistance, and they're like, we have so many congressional assistance requests pending, and the Department of State and USCIS gives them nothing. Like, they've tried to arrange expedited interviews through the Department of State, and they don't hear anything back, or they're like, we can't work with you. And so I know the Colorado delegation, at least, is like pretty frustrated with the issue too. And if Congress, like, if they can't get anything done, it's like,
yeah, and this is all just waiting for a decision, which could be a denial. I mean, there are a ton waiting for this processing. The ones that have been processed, a lot have been denied. So it's at least, like, we're not saying, hey, where's our approval? Like, at least just make a decision on the case, and then maybe we could find a different thing that we could try. But for now, we're just, again, stuck. And so it's incredibly frustrating, and even more frustrating for people that paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars in filing fee costs, because for every single one of these applications, unless you filed for a filing fee waiver, which is possible, but you had to, I think the filing fee is over $500, and it's per application. So per person, yeah. So if you have a family of 8, then you have spent thousands of dollars and have gotten nothing for these people that are in a crisis that could be being killed at this very. It's incredibly frustrating. So yeah, Sammy. I mean, I know you didn't really ask a question, and we don't really have an answer either. But we feel you, and we're frustrated about it too, and we're trying to do everything that we can for these people, but the Department of State and USCIS is just sitting there. Who knows what they're doing? But unfortunately, that's just the situation, and we'll keep you updated on whether or not that changes. But for now, that's how it is. So, okay.
so frustrating and, like, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I can't.
All right. Well, that was our only comment today. So a very frustrating and sad thing to go out on, but
Get on our soapbox.
I
Sorry.
I've gone off on like rants about this to my friends and
Yeah.
city congressional offices. Like I could go on for hours
yeah,
about how frustrated I am.
yeah.
But,
Let's
yeah.
send them a link and then you can get started, okay?
all right.
Well, anyways, we'll see you guys next week, Thursday. Come with your questions. And until then, have a great week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.